The question is, I think, when you compare the traditional banks and new players such as Revolut, N26, so the new banks, or the GAFA, is really the question of how to engage the customer. It's not only about digital gadgets, it's really about the customer relationship. Banks traditionally have been waiting for their customers to come into their branches, to come to their app or to their website, when what really the Revolut or N26 do, or Google, is to engage proactively the consumer. So be much more real-time, be personalized, be contextual, and really come to the customer with smart propositions, with the right services at the right moment. And really then it needs to be implemented in terms of different channels and technology, but the key of the difference is this way to engage the customer differently. I think customers already do actually, because what you see the banks have done quite well since the 2000s is most countries is already move all the basic operations of transfers or checking your balance to the digital channels. I mean, most of transfers usually in the world are done through the web or through apps. The question is the next steps, but I think banks, customers already trust digital channels. They know that an app can be actually more secured than a branch to keep their money. And the question is really the value of the service that banks can offer to them if they want to keep them. Frankly, probably much less. If you look at trends across the world, you see that, for example, in the UK, big banks already have, for 60 million people, branch networks in the range of 600, 700 branches. In France, for example, it's already going down 10 or 15% since a few years ago. So if you look at a country like Portugal, which has almost the same number as the UK for a population that is the fifth of the UK one, you can guess that the number of branches is going to go down. Then the question is, what will we do with those branches? And what we see in the world is also that they will probably have very different formats. So they will probably be more technological, they will be more focused on advice. And at the same time, banks can have also what we call pop-up branches. That means that to try to acquire new customers, they try to pop up at some time in the places where people actually go, like shopping centers or shopping areas. So probably much less branches with very different formats. I think the question is really the quality of service. If you look at the question of price, of course, the new players also tend to lower the prices overall, and the GAFA as well, as we know that they monetize the data, and so they don't need, for example, to apply a fee as a bank would do. But banks can probably manage that with differentiated, segmented offerings using the type of freemium concepts that we see in the digital world. Coming back to the example of Revolut, for example, you will see that it's free if you want it to be free, but if you pay a fee, you will have a higher volume of foreign exchange without a commission. So it's this kind of trade-off. The quality of service is probably something that is much more difficult to implement, because as we said, it's about really how you mix the different channels to engage your customer. It's also about having usually 24-hour 7 contact centers that can respond to the customer's inquiries and try to sometimes use that to sell him something. And banks clearly are not at that level. Usually they will serve their customers 5 days a week, 9 to 5. So that's probably where the real transition should be, and which is what is the most difficult. Actually, this is an area where the fintech is also hitting very strongly today. And the GAFAs as well. For example, it's not yet in countries like Portugal, but Amazon lending is now very strong in the US. And what they do is lend money to small companies that are present on the Amazon marketplace, using the data that they already have on those companies. So instead of filing a very complex application to get a loan, they will propose a very standardized loan based on everything they already know about you as a company. So this is also an area of competition, and now we see a lot of new generation of fintech companies targeting this area, as they know that the consumer area is starting to get quite crowded.